Hi, my name is Heather Kane, and I'm going to share with you today what are HyperDocs and how you can use them within your classroom very easily, no matter what age level or subject you are teaching. On the screen here, you'll see a bit.ly and a QR code that will lead you both to the information I'm going to share so that you have a copy of it with you to use as you're working through creating and exploring HyperDocs and how you can use them. Also, my contact information at the bottom. Please feel free to reach out to me if you need any help or you have any questions. So let's get started. So for today, I am actually sharing with you a HyperDoc I have created, but this HyperDoc is all about HyperDocs and how to use them within your classroom. So if you want to go to the bit.ly, scan that QR code, you can actually pull this actual HyperDoc up and manipulate it as we go through this or play with it after I've kind of explained each section here. So just like in a lesson you have in the classroom, you're going to start with the engage. You're not in front of your students. You cannot use your voice to engage. So in most instances for myself, I start with graphics. So I have two different graphics here and even a graphic of a table. These are all about what a HyperDoc is and what it is not. So let's start with it is not a digital version of a worksheet. It is not inflexible. It is not just another way to give information for students to just take in. It is very transformative, interactive, personalized, and it's a tool that is going to facilitate student creativity and collaboration. You could build an entire unit in a HyperDoc, a single lesson. For me, the very first time I created a HyperDoc, I made a preview of an upcoming unit. So students took a test, and after they were done with their test, they were working through just a preview of the unit coming up. I was exposing them to vocabulary that they were going to need to know or have an idea of. I was giving them just engaging videos and articles that would help their mind to start thinking about what was coming and to start getting excited about this next concept. I will say that I found a huge difference with my ESL students when they had been previously exposed to vocabulary, so that when it came up in a lesson, it wasn't the very first time they had seen it, and they had seen it in print. They had seen it as an image. They had seen it in a video or heard it within a video being used. So you would have your students in their HyperDoc go through this engage portion, look at the images you've given them, look at the table if you've given them a table, whatever you would like it to be. And I'll actually share with you the very first HyperDoc I made. It's in the bit.ly up there. I think you should have access to it. So then what makes this different than just a worksheet or a list of links for them to click through is that they are going to be actively engaged in this HyperDoc. So you're always going to give them something to do after that engage portion. For the sake of this one, I just want you to think, what did you already maybe know about HyperDocs, if anything? And what inferences can you make just off of the graphics I've given above? So these are often the two questions I always give engage for my students. What do you already know about the topic or concept? What are some inferences you can make? Now, there's different ways they can give you that. You guys, I've said, hey, just think about it. Add a gift. Tell me how you're feeling into this HyperDoc. And if you share this through Google Drive, you would have access of seeing your students' track of learning throughout this because they could just upload right there. You could have them turn to a partner and tell the answers to these questions. They could write it on a sticky note and stick it on the board. So there are lots of different ways that you could find out how your students are thinking just after the engage portion of the lesson. So the next part would be explore. In the explore part, this is when you give your students choice. They're always wanting choice in their learning. So let's give them choice. I usually give a couple of videos, a couple of images, maybe some articles to read. And so I've done that for you here. And they don't do them all. You let them choose. So I said, look through at least 3 of these examples or resources below. And I remind them that it's not a drive-by. Click on the links, read thoroughly, because again, in a minute, I'm going to ask them to share some things they've learned. So for the sake of this one, for us, I have given links to elementary, middle school, and high school HyperDocs that have already been created. There is a plethora of HyperDocs already created out there that you can just simply copy and paste for yourself, or like I often do, find one you like, add it into Google, make a copy of it in Google, and tweak it to work for you and your students. So I would pause at this point and let you click through all of these, whichever ones you want to, several of them, all of them, whatever you prefer, and see some different examples of each one. Also, I have them visit, like for you here, I said, visit the following websites to see a variety of HyperDoc formats and why they work. So within these here, you would be able to click on and see some awesome HyperDocs. For example, if I click on this one, it's from Ditch That Textbook, and it's going to give you lots of different engaging activities or examples that you can use within a HyperDoc so you are creating. So just click through this and read through each of those if you would like to learn a little bit more about HyperDocs. You could also look at these Google Draw templates. There's a lot of templates created out there already that this is what I did, is you just add them to your drive and then you can click on different ones that you want to use. So here's a cause and effect chain maybe that you want to use. And these again are from Matt Miller with Ditch That Textbook. So here you go. You could stick this in to your HyperDoc and your students are going to share what they've learned on here. And let me show you exactly how that's going to look. So after my students have explored, you always, again, just like in your Engage, need something for them to do so that you can track that they are following along this. So right here, I have assignment. Click on the following link. So there's a link in here that's going to require them to make a copy. You always want to do that so that they can upload it into their HyperDoc for you to see. So they're going to make a copy. And this one, it says, after exploring the HyperDoc examples, fill out the following chart. When you finish, it tells them how to do it. File, download, PNG, and then they are going to go back in, and I'll show you in a minute, and add the image to their HyperDoc. So I want them to tell me here, what are the examples that they explored? So they're just going to list to me at least 3 different things, the titles of the 3 they explored. They're going to tell me a few details that stand out. How did they include collaboration, communication, critical thinking, and creating? So this question is specific to HyperDocs. And then what did I think about it and why? So you really could just tweak this one section here for your students depending on what they're doing. So they're going to fill this out. They would go file, download, PNG, and then they would go back into the HyperDoc that you have shared with them. Once they're back into this HyperDoc, they are going to click in this box or wherever you would like them to and upload that PNG that they just downloaded. And so since I've shared this through Google, I will be able to immediately see their path of learning, where they are in my HyperDoc, and are they taking it seriously? What are they learning? What are they benefiting from? So the next portion would be the explain. So it says, look at the links below to find out how to create your own HyperDoc. So this is where I would put the explain portion of my lesson. I'm explaining something to them. In this case, I've got links for you on how-tos, templates, transforming your teaching, and favorite tools. And then again, don't reinvent the wheel. Check out Teachers Give Teachers. It's free. There are a ton of HyperDocs already out there. You can even just search the web. I have found so many HyperDocs, and like I said, most of them that you can just copy into your Google Drive, and then you can just copy, paste, delete, and make it work for you and your students. So in this explain portion, you're going to first look at how are you going to do, or how does this concept, whatever it is you're teaching, how does it work? What do you do with it? Then next comes the apply. So I want my students to do something with all of the information they have just understood or learned, just as I want you to apply what you have learned just in this short amount of time about HyperDocs by clicking through all of these links and kind of navigating different tools. So using the information you've learned so far, do the following. So I want you to choose a lesson. I want you to think about maybe something you're teaching or you're going to be teaching, or a topic that excites you, or maybe even one that you're like, I need help. I don't like how I've taught this in the past. Choose a template. So go back up into the Explorer portion of this HyperDoc, you can choose one of these templates. You can go here. There's a lot of samples by content area, Google Draw templates. Use any of those. Begin creating your own HyperDoc. Once you've added finishing touches, evaluate your HyperDoc using this HyperDoc checklist. So this is a little checklist for you. How does it define for creativity? Do you have collaboration? Are you connecting? Or do students have voice and choice? Are they able to share? So go through this and see, what do you think? How does yours hold up following this checklist? So this is where I would have my students create something. They could create a video. They could use Google Draw to create a representation of what they just learned. They could make a web of some sort in Google Draw. Then you upload it. So I'm going to have them to just upload it right here into this share section that I have left open. And often I tell my kids, if I've given them a short amount of time period, it doesn't have to be fabulous, especially if this is just kind of not necessarily a lesson for a grade. This was a preview maybe to an upcoming unit. I want to just a snippet of what they're thinking. I always have a reflect section. For me, add a video to our Flipgrid to share your reflection. So if you click on this link, it's actually going to take you to a Flipgrid about HyperDocs and this learning session right here and how you feel about it. But I always link a Flipgrid for my students to reflect on whatever the concept is that they have just gone through with this HyperDoc. And then please add that extend. An extension is not just for those GT higher level students. It could also be for those students that this type of learning is exciting for them and they are actually willing to go above and beyond. So here I've given some examples. HyperDoc checklist again. There's the HyperDoc handbook. It's a link for like if you want to actually see the hard copy of it. There is a HyperDoc handbook out there. There's some templates and there's even a YouTube video channel for you to peruse through if you want. So I also want to share with you, like I said, the one that I actually created. And then I want to leave you time for you to work through this again. If you click on that QR code, if you click on the bit.ly or scan the QR code, you should be able to actually work through this HyperDoc yourself. I highly recommend it. This is kind of how I learned to use HyperDocs, is by working through one myself and manipulating it. Therefore, I knew like, ooh, that was kind of hard for me to do. I'm not sure my students could do that. And just figuring out different ways that would work best with me and in my classroom. So let me share with you the very first one I ever created. So like I said, the very first one I ever created was a preview to an upcoming unit. So it's very basic. As you can see, I almost took that exact template I just shared with you and kind of deleted images, deleted text, and put my own in. So I've got images, cartoon graphics about World War I. I've asked them, after reading the information above, to just think about following questions. What do they know about World War I? What inferences can they make? Then the Explorer, I had them look through at least 3 examples from the resources below, and I reminded them about it not being a drive-by. And as you can see, this template should look very familiar, but I just gave them like 5 different links here, and they got to choose 3. They had an explain where they had to click, and if you will look, I'll click on it. It's the exact same graphic that I had shared with you in the HyperDoc one. It's going to always make sure you require them to make a copy, but they had to tell me the 3 places they explored, what they found interesting, and what were their initial thoughts about World War I. And so then they saved that as a PNG. Once uploaded, they would stick it right here. I told them insert your exploration doc there. Then they had to apply. So for this one, since it was just a preview of an upcoming unit, I said, use the information you've learned so far to do the following. I wanted them to create a wish list of 5 things you want to learn more about when we start our unit on World War I. Use the resources you studied above to get your ideas from and type them in the share below. So this was a very simple, and it allowed me as a teacher to plan my upcoming unit and lessons. Then the reflect, like I said, was a Flipgrid. They were just going to reflect their thoughts. And then extend, I added a vocabulary. I told them they could do an activity with Google Draw, creating a timeline, and that there was even a Brain Pop World War I assignment. So I hope this was helpful. I hope you're as excited as I was about using this within my classroom. So now if you'll take some time, you can use that bit.ly above to open this exact document, manipulate it, click on those links. I would recommend, even though it says explore just 3, exploring all of them when you have time and just see if you can make your own. And again, I'm here. All my contact information is back on that first screen. I am here to help you anytime you need. Have fun.